election of members to the East African Legislative Assembly on its consideration of the names and nomination papers of the duly nominated candidates for election as members of East African Legislative Assembly laid on the table of the House on Tuesday, November 15th, 2022. Give this chance to Honorable Member for Bureti, Kibet, Honorable Kibet Komingoi. If not in the House, I will give this chance to Honorable Johanna Ngeno, Member for Emurua Dikir.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for allowing me also this opportunity to weigh in on this particular motion, which is a motion on selection of members to the IALA. Madam Speaker, I wish to support the committee, and I believe that during the election, during that particular moment, Madam Speaker, when we'll be electing those particular members, we will have an opportunity to know who among us the 15 will be the 9, or who among us the 30 will be the 9 who will represent our country in the East African Parliament. Madam Speaker, I will still stick to the very issue which I raised before when we were actually appointing the committee to look into this matter, that it is time we do a legislation, and I wish to ask the chairperson, to look into the regulations and the rules that create the East African Parliament. I wish to ask the member to look into those particular rules so that we can amend the part of the treaty, because, you know, East African Parliament is a creature of a treaty. And of course, you know, we have the East African Parliament and we have the East African Court. Madam Speaker, when you look at those two institutions, those are institutions which are created from, or whose membership are members of different states, which means that is a body that is higher than, or that is supposed to be superior to the bodies that we have back home. Madam Speaker, if you look even at the East African Court, Madam Speaker, the East African Court rules.
Order.
Mr. Speaker, you know, Mr. Speaker, you are my good friend, and I had not noticed that there was change of guard. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, I used to say that when you look at the East African Court, the East African Court normally rules on matters that had been dispensed with at the Supreme Court of the country. But when you look at the selection of those people who sit in that particular court, Mr. Speaker, they are not comparable to the Superior Court judges. So sometimes, Mr. Speaker, I think some rulings are upside down, because how can a judge who is of a superior, who is of an inferior position, rule again as a judge of the Supreme Court, who is of a higher ranking? Mr. Speaker, the same thing with the members to the Legislative Assembly of East Africa. Madam Speaker, we need to do a law that will allow members who go to that particular court, or those members who go to the assembly, to be members of higher stature, because that assembly should be of higher status. Mr. Speaker, having said that, I wish to say that what are our interests in IALA? Mr. Speaker, our interest in IALA is as stated by the functions that this IALA is supposed to perform. The IALA is supposed to liaise with the National Assembly and the partner states on matters relating to the community. Mr. Speaker, we are talking about the community of East Africa. The communities, the countries which are within that particular scope. Mr. Speaker, that is the reason why I think when we are electing members to that particular assembly, we need to be like what the chair has said. The chair has stated that members who are making applications to this particular assembly. Mr. Speaker, in other countries, they do a presentation to the people who are selecting or to the people who are electing. We also need to change the rules so that the members who are applying or making applications to this particular assembly must also do a presentation so that those people who are going to be picking them will look at their proper presentation. Mr. Speaker, the other function of this particular assembly is to discuss matters. Other than the question of approving budgets and all that, the other part which is very important, Mr. Speaker, is the discussion on matters referred to regarding the community and making recommendations as it may deem necessary to the implementation of the community treaty. Mr. Speaker, remember, treaties are very serious laws which actually guide the relationship between countries, between states. And that is why, Mr. Speaker, I think the members who have been proposed to this particular selection, Mr. Speaker, are up to the task. I would say, even when we are doing other selections, Mr. Speaker, I wish to say that, Mr. Speaker, I wish you protect me from the interruption, and I wish to proceed by saying, Mr. Speaker, the names which have been forwarded to this particular House are members who we believe will go and represent our country properly. These are people who we think have good, credible, and reputations. These are members who have, some of them have been members of this House, some of them have been members of the Senate, some have been members of the society who've been practicing on one way or another. These are people, Mr. Speaker,
Sabina
it's a
Chege
good
on a point
selection
of order.
that we know.
Order, Honorable Joanna Ngeno, is on. What is out of order?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg your indulgence on Standing Order number 95. Mr. Speaker, we are aware as a House that we need to conclude this matter, and I can look at the House and I see we have a quorum. And Mr. Speaker, therefore, we need also this matter to be gazetted so that we are able to vote for the candidates on Thursday.